Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Dave Beaver, Pastor Dave Beaver to some of you. Welcome to another episode of Grappling with Life. And I'm super excited because today, a good friend of mine, all the way from Canada. So it's actually, he's 2 hours earlier than we are here today. And I'm super excited to have my friend, Nick Martinuke, join us from Canada. If you've never watched this show and this is your first time, listen, Grappling Life is pretty simple. I know that every human being is grappling with something, whether it's their career, whether it's finances, whether it's their faith, whether it's their personal health and wellness, whatever it is, relationships. Every human being I know today is grappling with something. So I like to bring guests on that can share their stories, inspire people to keep grappling with life one day at a time and succeeding, overcoming, and becoming their very best. And so without further ado, like I said, today my guest is Nick Martinuke. And so Nick, here's what's really cool, man. You and I get introduced to a mutual friend named Dave.
Right.
And he reached out to me as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, as a grappler, and someone who's very connected in the MMA world, do some pay-per-view for professional and amateur MMA, boxing, around a lot of athletes. He said, hey, man, I think I have this product. And I think I'd suffered an injury. I think is how, if my memory serves me correct, I had a little bit of an injury. It was one of those annoying nuisance things. And he hits me up and he says, hey, man, I'm not a sales guy, blah, 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 but I think that you should check this out. I think you'd really like it. And here's a couple other guys. We had some mutual professional athlete friends, TJ and Dante Leone, and just a couple other folks, right? And so long story short, he sends me this product, right? But before we get to the product, before we get all of that, I just want to give a little teaser so we can talk about it, because it's like a miracle in a bottle, man. It really is. I just want to take a few moments and say, hey, Nick, tell us who you are. So before we get to this miracle in a bottle, that's what I'll call it. Who is Nick? What's your background been? And then we're going to talk about this incredible product.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for bringing me on the show today. I appreciate the time. I appreciate anyone who's listening to what we've got going on. But my background is in natural medicine. That's been my background for 25 years. I've been in clinical practice.
Yeah.
And the bulk of what we've been dealing with here is pain management. Is always a big thing. It doesn't matter who you are. At some point in your life, you're going to come into pain, whether it's through trauma, whether it's through what the MMA world can bring about for pain and training. And we all try and push our limits at some point, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And pain is a good signal to slow down, to recover, to, and we have to always be careful in pain management where we don't want to just mask it, because the worst thing you can do is mask it so you numb it and not feel any pain. And then you move forward and you create more and more internal damage.
Sure.
So, one thing that we did clinically for years is try to find these types of solutions, right? Everyone has, always used different topicals, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those topicals tend to just be more of a skin irritant. And trust me, in the clinic, we've tried it all.
Yeah.
So, this is what led me down the journey of finding solutions, finding problems or solutions to everyday problems. And sometimes we have to look back at what was effective years and years and years ago and try and improve on those things, as opposed to always looking for the next magical solution. We always have to look back and see what's worked, what hasn't worked, why has this worked, how can we make it work better, problem shoot, right? And so that's really how my whole career has led me to this point of moving forward with product developments and formulations is that hands-on experience in clinic. And like everybody else, you get to a point of frustration where we have to find better solutions to what we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And that's clinical years, university is one thing, and the amount of time you spend there and colleges and whatnot.
Sure.
You learn the basis of what you need to move forward in life, kind of thing, right? And in your career. But it's that experience that's invaluable, because that gives you firsthand results, and you're not learning from a textbook, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's much like MMA, right? Same kind of concept is you're not going to learn much by watching videos. You actually have to roll up your sleeves and
absolutely
start training.
being a practitioner, being involved, being engaged is completely different. Jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, whatever kind of, combat sport it may be, or it could be as simply as knitting. If you watch people knit sweaters, if you don't ever pick up a knit, you don't have a clue. Now, 25 years, let me key on a couple of things you said here. We live in a world that big pharma, right? And we hear that term, big pharmaceutical companies, big pharma, a lot of times they avoid more natural medications you discussed because they can't patent them. And if they can't patent them, then they can't make money from them. And so, they might take a pure product that is, created by God Almighty, right? Something natural. And they add stuff to it, mix it up a little bit so they can slap a fancy patent on it. But it really only pollutes the product because now we're putting those things in our body. You said something that I think is really important for people to know. You talked about pain management, which pain management is huge, not just for athletes, but everyday aches and pains, getting older, arthritis, different joint issues, different illnesses that people may have, or they have flare-ups. And I understand the frustration of either, as an athlete, everyone's used Bengay, everyone's used Icy Hot, everyone's used, a variety of things. And it either makes the skin warm or it makes the skin cold, simply numbing the nerves on the surface, but it doesn't really actually get to penetrate to the pain on a cellular level or to the ligaments, to the tendons, to the muscle. However, through your 25 years of clinical practice, going back to what was used in the past, what was good, and how do we maybe reemerge it, or how do we make it the best? You come to a discovery of a beautiful product. I'll just say it, and then I want you to talk about this, the DMSO.
Sure. Yeah.
So DMSO comes back to the table, and just from that journey of DMSO to where you are now, let's talk a little bit about that. And for those who don't know what DMSO is and how it works.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll go right into that history of it. DMSO, or also known as, in its full term, dimethyl sulfoxide, is nothing new. Okay, this is something that's been around for probably a couple hundred years, since the days of making pulp, right, through the paper industry. And really, dimethyl sulfoxide, or DMSO, is a result of the cellulose fibers breaking down. We've all seen the images of the processes of making pulp, where it's floating in that solution, breaking down the cellulose fibers and all of that within the wood chips. And that liquid essentially becomes dimethyl sulfoxide as a result of the breakdown of these cellulose fibers. So it's completely natural as a result of taking a tree and making pulp. Now, where this really started was through this early pulping days. The guys that were working, or the gals that were working with it, were really not experiencing the same achiness and the other pains and problems and inflammatory responses that are found in their friends and their family and those that were working with it. So really what it broke down to is more of understanding what the end result of that is. And it turns out that essentially DMSO is an organic solvent. And so what that means is it's a penetrant. It goes through all cells. As we talked about that counter-irritant effect, right? You put on something as a cold solution or a heat-making solution, like the ones you had mentioned earlier. Those are playing with surface nerves. They're just making it feel hot or feel cold to distract you from the pain, right? So it's like stepping on your toe to forget about your headache, right? You haven't solved any problems. You've just created a new one to cover up the old one. And DMSO, being such a fine property, when it actually touches skin, it's a penetrant. It penetrates right through all cells. It enters, like you were saying, right where the areas of inflammation and damage are, where it can impact circulation to speed up healing process, remove waste products faster. It impacts the peripheral C nerve fibers from firing. And so not only is it dealing with inflammation, it's also dealing with pain, and it's also speeding up the healing process. So, but again, being from a natural source, there's a lot of jockeying to who can use it and what we have to ban and what we have to, for margins of profit and competitiveness against prescription products, right? So it has had a lot of adversities over 100 and some plus years of this really moving forward, right? And as we look through history, it was used widely. And then as we get more into the mid 1900s, suddenly that's when the pharmaceutical world really wanted to mark their territory and have the influences over the decision makers, right? The influence, the lobbyists of all of that, that works. What's approved, what's not approved, what can be used, what can't be used. But and DMSO is, again, nothing new. But the thing with the DMSO is it's never been user friendly. Much like many things, it works, but it has some of the unwanted effects that come along with that effectiveness. And one of the big ones is you could smell it.
Okay.
I mean, you can smell it. If you think some of those other solutions smell funky, well, this one's right up there, because what it does smell like is fermented garlic oysters, I guess is the best way to mention that, right? So it does have a real funk smell to it. But not only will you smell it, you'll taste it, right? As soon as you put it on the skin, within seconds, even clinically, people will, in our experimenting days early on in developing the right balances, but people would say, taste the garlic like within seconds, because that's how fast it's entering the system. You can put it on your foot and you'll taste it right away. Right? So it does do what it's supposed to do, but now it became to a point of how do we make it user friendly? And so for years and years,
some of that.
Always been.
So you're saying that some of that history, before you get the product to where it is today, some of that history was in the clinical engineering, the trial errors of DMSO, understanding that DMSO penetrates the skin, the cellular level of the skin, gets down to the source of the ache, the pain, the ligament, the tear, any of those things. But some of those early, hey, this is really good, but here's the negative. It's got this burnt garlic, gnarly taste, smell to it. So it's not very friendly using, right? Some people say, this tastes so terrible, I'm not going to use it, right? Okay, so that's I'm just tracking people at home that might be, taking notes here. So that was some of the early challenges with the DMSO, plus all the who can use it, who can't use it, what's bound, what's been bound, what's been allowed, and you've been chipping away at it, and perfecting your solution. And all right, let's continue the journey. I love it, man. I'm super nerded out about this, man. I love this stuff. I'm explaining more.
And so not only did it have a funky smell, but being a penetrant, it also had a tendency to be a little harsh on skin, right? Yeah. Because not only is it going through, it's taking the moisture out of the skin with it, right?
Gotcha.
So it was common for people to develop dryness, a bit of a scaly skin where it was applied and things along that line. So again, not friendly to skin, not friendly to taste, not friendly to smell. Even though you don't use it in your mouth, again, you just taste it based on its absorption, penetrating capabilities. Yeah. So this is where clinically we went, well, we need to figure out, we know this is an effective solution as far as DMSO goes. It's been studied for years and years and years. And so we took that DMSO and simply probably did thousands of different formulations to find a balance of how do we eliminate the smell, the taste, how do we make it easy on skin, how can we incorporate other components to it that are also going to enhance the whole thing, right? It's a synergistic effect. Yeah. And so on the market, there are, raw DMSOs that have been available for years and years and years. I mean, as a matter of fact, hospitals have been using DMSO. It's not something that's not in use, but they're using it for different fields. Years ago, back when organ donation kind of started, I know DMSO was a big factor in that because, again, what's its capabilities? It's penetrating all cells. So take, for example, we, pull out a kidney to go to the next person. I don't know if you're a hunter or if you ever, did anything with some big game, up in Canada. That's kind of a way of life up here. But essentially, organs dry out very, very quickly. And so when they're submerged into a little bath of DMSO, it, again, penetrates all cells and keeps that kidney hydrated until it gets to the next guy. Gotcha. So this is where they did find uses clinically in that regards. And then they also started using it for interstitial cystitis, which is a very painful bladder condition where they'll actually inject it into the bladder. And turns out that it's a very, very effective treatment. Nice. So there has been multitude of medical uses. I know even right now there's some studies on using it in tandem with chemotherapy.
Gotcha.
for the treatment of, for example, brain tumors.
Mm.
You know, the blood-brain barrier is there for a reason, to protect the brain from taking in anything that it probably shouldn't be taking in,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And essentially, chemotherapy medications have a very difficult time penetrating that barrier. And so that's why they're trying to increase the effectiveness of the treatments. And again, where DMSO comes into play is because it's a penetrant. It has that capability of going through things as an organic solvent. But on the flip side of that, the other bonus is it has the ability to take something by the hand and bring it into the system.
Such as maybe like a catalyst, right?
Exactly. It's a carrier.
A catalyst.
It's a carrier,
right? It's wonderful.
So exactly that. When you team it with some other components, not only is it coming across, but it's bringing his buddies along with him.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the areas of caution that's always been around DMSO, is they're always fearful of misuse of it. Well, anybody can misuse. I can make drugs out of the chemicals under my kitchen sink, right?
Sure.
So misuse is misuse, but responsible use is extremely beneficial. So I mean, you have to make sure, one of our things we always mention to people is make sure you're putting it on clean skin, because it is a penetrant and it is a carrier. You don't want to have bug spray all over you and then spray this off, right?
Yeah.
So it's again, common sense, clean skin, you have no problems.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing about it.
And I love the science of this, man. And like I said, I've studied and read, because first and foremost, like I do not, Nick, and seriously, nothing but respect for you. I personally, life is crazy. It's busy. The world is filled with all kinds of people. I like to tell people all the time, I do not partner with junk people, junk products. In my Twisted Church brand, I don't, if it's not the real deal, it's not legit, I don't partner with my brands. Or, you're a brand, Nick, you're a brand, Dave Beaver, I'm a brand. And I just, I've had a lot of people like hit me up like, hey, I'd love to sponsor your deal. I check them out as a human being. I'm like, no, thanks. I check out their product. I'm like, dude, it's bogus. It's not even a good deal. So for me, it's the integrity, the character side of saying, hey, I'm only going to support things that are legitimate, right? And the only way for me to really do that was to say, hey, this sounds good. Cool, Dave. Thanks for connecting me. Oh, man, thanks for talking to me about Nick. I went and checked out your YouTube, some different stuff. I did some research, deep dive research on DMSO, but I had the proofs in the pudding. So let me just take a moment, because I have it right here in front of me. The My Pain Linimint right here. This is an 80% DMSO. I can tell you guys have got this right. It does not smell bad. It does not leave no funky taste. But let me tell you my real time experience with this. I had a torn UCL in my thumb and a dislocated. So I had a fractured thumb. Just happened grappling right before I was competing, and that UCL, like all those tendons and ligaments, they just went the wrong way. Inflamed, swelled up. I mean, if I bumped it on anything, it would just set them nerves off on fire, right? But then also someone who trains, 6 days a week. My hands, like very arthritic, and my hands, I know that by the time I'm 53, I'm going to be in trouble if I keep at this rate. But knees, all these different things, right? So here is my application, real time, and this is over a couple months now. This is not over like, oh, it's been 3 days. This is over a couple months. This is to a completely repaired thumb. And I did suffer about a month ago another injury, which I'll talk about in a second. But I want to tell you because I haven't shared this with you yet. I wanted to wait to tell you face to face, in person, and also real time. Just so if you're watching this at home right now, I want you to hear this right now. Nick does not pay me. My Pain Linimit's not paying me. I don't get there's nothing in this for me except I like people. I love people. Someone who deals with pain and family members who do deal with chronic pain. I have, they've all been part of my test market with this, because if the proofs I'm putting for me, I needed to hear from some other people. And I can say with 100%, not one person of a dozen has come back to me and said, hey, that didn't do nothing for me. They're like, yo, that's amazing. That's the first thing I found that's working. That's actually helping. Here's been my application. I'll go train. I'll come home, get a shower, hot, warm. That's why I found it worked best for me. When I had the torn thumb issue, I would wash my hands, with warm water, get my skin kind of opened up, I would spray 3 sprays in the affected area, and then I would rub it in, whatever. And I did that 3 times a day, right? Not only, and it's weird, like when you spray this on your skin, it almost feels warm. It's like you can almost immediately feel it start to penetrate. It's not messing with the nerve. It's like, oh, why is that spray so warm on my hand? Then I start to massage it in. I did that regularly, right? And it significantly helped my thumb. It's the only thing that I was doing for my thumb outside of taping it during practice, which I will continue to do just to give the joint stability, right? A month ago, the floor in our gym was super sweaty. Sunday afternoon, competition class, rolling with a good friend, Zach. I went to stand with my right leg. I slipped. When I slipped, because it was so sweaty, I fell. My left knee bent under me. It gets real hot, right? A month later, I go to the doctor, a friend of mine. He said, I explained it to him, right? The thing was no muscle tear. He said, so it never bruised. I said, no. And then he told me, we go through this journey. Then he said, hey, you have a fascious tear, which is like between the skin and the muscle, and that's where the nerves are. And that fascia can tear. And he said, that's actually more painful than a muscle tear, because now it's like my skin was on fire. Like to touch my skin, it just felt like it was right as all those nerves. I kid you not. I started doing this 3 times a day. Again, same process, warm, clean the skin, apply this to it, massage it in, and then even using my massage gun gently on it. Dude, it is a game changer. Like it's a game changer. So I'm not joking. When I tell people like this, I think is like a miracle in a bottle. It's again, I'm not getting nothing from it. No one's paying me to say this. I'm not some spokesman. I'm just a real dude who trains hard, who's 43 years old, who beats his body up. And this right here has made a huge difference. So that's my testimony to you and to others. And this is something that I'm going to keep on me, not only to use it, but to get this in the hands of as many athletes. And I was even thinking about like some of the elderly people I know who have chronic pain issues. It's not just for athletes, but this right here has been a huge, huge help to me. And literally the dozen people that I gave on the test market all have had the same feedback to me. So thank you very much for a killer product.
Oh, you're welcome, man. That's great to hear. And that's what, gives us fuel is hearing the success stories that people have with using the product. If the product wasn't successful and we weren't hearing these things, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing, right? Yeah. It really is a word of mouth type of a product. Because again, this is something that get easily lost on the shelves of this amongst the 50 other topical applications. And it does have to have this little education component so people understand that it isn't just another type of a topical that's going to do what every other one does, just a different label and a different company and a different brand, right? And so that's been the big thing for us. And as you mentioned, seniors, I have to say clinically, that's probably one of our largest clientele is seniors in pain management with this. Arthritis is a big thing. Up in Canada, we do hit 40 below and with the wind, sometimes 50 below. And I know that's tough for a lot of people to even understand. But with that, in the wintertime comes a lot of inflammation with the pain and the cold. And you could just imagine, right? Stick your hand in the freezer for a couple minutes and see if it hurts when it comes out, right? It's these types of different pressure changes do affect arthritis significantly. That's why most seniors love to go down to Phoenix, Arizona area, Texas, where it's a different climate, right? But not everybody has the ability to fly down there for 6 months of the year.
Right. Let me ask you a little bit about this. And there's another product we'll talk about. I use it every day as well. The My Pain Linimint. How long did it take you guys in the journey to get this thing kind of dialed into where it is today? Where now it's getting ready to become more readily available. Now I know it's approved in Canada. Getting ready. We can talk about that journey. As we were talking a little bit about the company, what it's going to be listed over, and that process there. Talk a little bit about that for us.
Yeah, no, for sure. See, the difference is a little bit between the natural products between Canada and the US is just a good example is in Canada, it's highly regulated. And products have to go through an approval process, which could take anywhere from 6 months to years, I suppose, depending on the formulations that you have to go through an approval process.
Sure.
So essentially, we need to have a license on that product before it's marketable, before it can even be sold or done anything. And so you have to do all your due diligence to justify to Health Canada why it works, how it works, what your formula is, how this all happens. And then you get the stamp to go ahead and implement it, right? You need to seek that approval. Whereas on the US side, it works a little bit differently, where it's a little more of the Wild West, I like to call it, where individuals can create a product and then get it out in the market. And then it's only when somebody complains, or if the claims aren't what what the actual action is, and if the formula doesn't contain, which does happen, where what's in the bottle isn't what's on the label, then the FDA steps in after a complaint and kind of goes after the company per se, right? But so in Canada, we ask for permission. In the States, it's more of a ask for forgiveness. And so it's a much more difficult process in the Canadian market. And it is a smaller market comparatively to the two. It's not even comparable. And but the testing grounds in Canada kind of put it on a different level. When it goes through those processes, suddenly the credibility of the product on a global scale, because we do business through the Asian markets and things along that line. But again, they look at Canadian products as a very high gold standard, because it does go through a lot of preliminary work, which can take years. And for us, time frame probably took me close to 5 years of formulating and getting it through Health Canada. So, it's not something that happens overnight, but persistence and persistence and persistence, and maybe a little bit more persistence, right?
Yeah. So it's just kind of that hurry up and wait game, but it's
very much so. And
but when it happens,
we're always in that hurry up and wait game.
Absolutely.
Even as you mentioned where our company is going right now and the other products I know we want to talk about. One of the big areas that we also focus in on, we really focus in on three main areas: pain and pain management. And that's clearly what we've discussed most through the day here, which is excellent. The other areas that we're focused on is mental health and performance. Which is becoming, more and more prevalent with just through the COVID era here of depression and anxiety. We can get into post-traumatic stress. And so the area of focus with this, again, which we have a unique capability in Canada, is working with magic mushrooms, the psilocybin type of concept in even microdosing. And so this is where our company is going right now. We teamed up with MDs and psychologists and neurologists and all of these wonderful group of like-minded individuals who see the benefits in, again, looking at what we're doing on a prescription standpoint right now for mental health and performance, and to what we know mushrooms have the capability of doing. And so what the product is you have there is one of our earlier products of working and formulating with medicinal mushrooms. And again, heck, we haven't even named all the fungi, US way of saying it in the world, right? But we do know medically, fungi and medicinal mushrooms have been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This is not something new. We can look at the oldest medical books in the world out of that Asian region. What's in those books? Mushrooms. The reishi mushroom is one that's most people are familiar with. And a lot of these aren't edible mushrooms. You actually have to do something with them. It's you need the extraction. You need the active components out of it, right? But again, our biggest mission as a company right now is taking that traditional wisdom that's been passed down for generation and generation and generation for thousands of years. And finally integrating it into a functional integrated model of how physicians of all walks of life can start to utilize these things, how practitioners of all walks of life can start to utilize this traditional wisdom. It's where that traditional wisdom and modern science kind of come together. And that's really what we're all about. And our third component with that is immune function, right? So our three components are pain management, mental health and performance, and immune function. And so that's that product you have there is the cordyceps mushroom.
Is
the one you held up.
The
cordyceps mushroom. That's
phenomenal.
It's the caterpillar fungus, as it's well known. And that little unique history on that one is it's a fungus that grows on a caterpillar, right? And this is
Okay.
kind of the tradition, Cole's Notes tradition of this is this little fungus grew on a caterpillar.
Okay.
And it essentially turns the caterpillar into a zombie, right? It
Okay.
controls the mind of that caterpillar, and it gets it to crawl up a tree to a very high point, way up in a tree. And then it uses that as a source of energy, right? And so back in the day when this started to get interesting is where the traditional monks in the Himalayan mountains kind of thing would start to consume that little fungi off of that caterpillar, that stroma. Yeah. And then they had the ability to go higher and higher and higher in the mountains and build their little temples up high in the mountains in very, very thin air. What that mushroom or that cordyceps is well known for is exactly that, increasing your oxygen capacity in the lungs, allowing them to get higher elevation, still function. So it's dramatic for endurance, performance, vitality, libido. All of those things have proven traditional medicine for years. Many Olympic teams in the 70s and the 80s. Again, in professional sports, between first and last place could be 1/100 of a second, right?
Yeah, right.
So any edge is always looked for, right? And again, if this can make those differences, and that's traditionally what they've been using for exactly that: endurance, stamina, performance.
This one again, I love hearing the history of that. I didn't know any of that, the backstory, the history. So that is fascinating to me, and I'll share with you and for others my experience with this. So I'm a caffeine guy. I have been a long time. I'm a 43-year-old American male. Okay, caffeine is part of this culture. It's just not too So here's what I'd say. Let me say it like this. This culture, this country is over-medicated and it's over-caffeinated. It's overstimulated. And that's just a reality. I mean, people take major uppers in the morning and they all take major downers at night. I would say that's this culture of this country, maybe even the world, but I definitely know that's the culture of this country. So I'm the kind of guy, I can tell you there was a time in my life, there's an energy drink called Bang. Probably should be banned, but I was drinking like 3 of them a day. This was like 975 milligrams of caffeine a day, right? Wow. And then after a period of time of drinking way too much, man, I started having heart palpitations, all this stuff weird, man. It was affecting my blood pressure. Sure. It was bad, right? So somebody who just enjoys the energy drink or coffee or whatever. So here's what I've done. And I'm not saying that I haven't. I will still drink a white Monster, sugar-free white Monster every now and then, whatever. But here's been my morning routine. Get up, get myself ready for work. And I legitimately will spray. So I drink usually water in the morning, but I will spray 7 or 8 sprays of this directly in my mouth. I go to work and I'm like, I'm good to go, right? Even if I want to have a cup of coffee because I like a cup of coffee, but this right here, I use this before I train. So in the past, I was taking pre-workouts that were, again, to boost oxygen levels, to boost energy. The problem with those is sometimes they made me feel jittery. Other times they disrupted my sleep. Then I was so amped up, I could not rest. My adrenaline, I feel like I had like my adrenaline glands, it was just, my body would adapt to it. And then it was like, you need more, you need more, you need more. And what I love about this is this right here, it gives me what I need. I get going. I have good energy. I feel like I can breathe well. And I've noticed a huge difference just in the cardiovascular side of using this 2 times a day in the morning to get going, like I would coffee or Red Bull or, Monster drinks or Bang or whatever. And then using this as my pre-workout. So 30 minutes before I go train, I spray this in my mouth, then I drink my water and hit it. And it is, again, these 2 things are the 2 things I've used, and they are part of my daily regimen now, and they have made a significant difference. That's why I wanted to talk about these 2 particular, because I'm like, man, I know so many people that both of these things in their life would probably help them cut out some of that caffeine, cut out some of that, processed junk they're eating and drinking, for energy.
For sure. Hey, just to touch base on that caffeine, like you say, the jitteriness, the heart palpitations, a lot of these things come from, the stimulants, right?
Yeah.
A good food for thought and something that, anybody can incorporate is, again, in traditional medicine, we can look at green tea or tea in general. But green tea has also caffeine, for example, and tea does, but you typically won't get your jitteriness and things along that line with tea. And the reason why is because it has the amino acid theanine in there, okay, or L-theanine. So anybody that takes caffeine, a great thing to do is start to incorporate theanine, the amino acid, into the system. And it's kind of the balance to the caffeine. And it keeps you at a good spot, but doesn't give you all those unwanted effects that you're looking for. And so that's why in formulations of energy, you'll start to see theanine in different caffeinated products, because it's what we would call a balanced energy versus a spike and a crash kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the word. I use the word clean energy versus feeling like that I'm amped up and then I'm crashed, right? So like you said, that balance or that clean energy, and you know the difference. And that's I'll look into that. Maybe start adding the good old green tea into the repertoire here. So yeah, that's good, man. What would be just, obviously you love what you do. You've been involved in this for 25 years. And you have the kind of profound opportunity to create, but also to research and to look what's always been there. That's what I think I love about natural medicine is, who would have ever thought, right? Who would have ever thought, and who would ever discovered that there's a fungi growing on a caterpillar, and yet that history and getting to that brings so much, empowerment, encouragement, and health and wellness in a very natural manner. Now, whether people are faith or not, I'm a person of faith, a pastor, but I look at that and go, hey man, I feel like whatever people's belief is, God above for me, the creator of the universe gave us everything we need in the Garden of Eden, if you will. Look at that. Sure. And in the trees and in the earth for what we need, right? But we all fall so prey. We all fall so prey to wanting it faster and wanting it quicker. And that's where my personal problem. Now, I'm probably going to get stoned for this, but who cares? It's my show. I can say whatever, right? But this is what my problem with pharmaceutical companies, right? Sometimes we create more medical problems for somebody by trying to mask one problem. I was a clinical director at a facility, and I would work with people, and they'd come in, and there were people that were on 18, 19, 22 different medications a day. And I'm like, how could any MD, any DO ever regulate this amount of medication okay, we're going to take this medication, but it's going to cause this. So we're going to take this medication to counteract this cause and effect. And I thought to myself, like, it's kind of insane, but that's where that's where they make their money, is in these manufactured, man-made narcotics. Your journey, which I love, and your partnerships and these doctors, and don't get me wrong, MDs, DOs, respect for all of them, but looking at these more natural, pure, powerful resources to help people is tremendous, right? Talk a little bit on that, a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, right? And that's where we're approaching it from the integration angle. See, we have to understand MDs or the osteopaths in the States or what have you. Yeah. Anybody in practice, regardless of the style that they practice, there's a time and a place for it all. Because again, but it comes down to, unfortunately, there's way too many egos in a room.
Yes.
Okay? And so this is one of the big things where you have one physician that will say, this is what you need to do. And then you talk to somebody else. I mean, you can go with the same problem and see 4 different doctors. You'll leave with 4 different prescriptions.
That's true.
Right.
That's right.
And this is just the reality of it. So, and again, each physician and each modality, if you want to call it that, they're all trained specifically in that area of focus.
Yeah.
But again, it's when we can take the area of focus of an MD and now incorporate it with the focus of the naturopath. And then you can also integrate and incorporate with a chiropractor or an osteopath or an acupuncturist or traditional Chinese medicine, or, I mean, the list goes on with different types of modalities. But when we can all come together in a room and go, you know what, we're all looking for the best possible outcome for the patient.
Absolutely.
Egos aside, let's kind of see what on the nutritional side would work best, what on a prescription side is recommended, what on a lifestyle changes, in a lot of cases with different conditions, if people just simply stop putting fuel on the fire and eliminated sugar and, alcohol as an example, it might feel a lot better. We don't really need a pill for that.
Right.
So, I mean, we have to really look at a holistic picture, and everyone's a piece of that pie. Everybody's a piece of that pie. And the one thing with synthetic medications is we also have to understand that they do come from either an animal, plant, or mineral source or things along that line.
Yeah.
Right. But what often happens, here's a good example. Would you rather think that the vitamin C in a capsule, in that chewable orange one you're getting, at your local store, is as effective as eating the orange? Or is the orange more effective than that, right?
Yeah.
Because again, that's what you call a synthesized form, where we can extract that vitamin C and we can say it's from, this orange. But what are all the other cofactors? What are all the other components within that orange, all the other little compounds that made it all work so nicely? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And these are the things we have to always look at. And so as we move forward with the company, we're in the process of just completing a reverse merger and becoming a publicly traded company.
Beautiful.
So this is a big thing of what we're trying to do is integrating that traditional knowledge into today's science, and to develop those protocols and platforms that different physicians can tie into, and having a bigger global community where individuals can access resources of all kinds, finding solutions to problems. And working hand in hand and arm in arm to try and find that solution for that individual, right?
Yeah.
And I see this more and more over my 25 years. I think what I've seen more and more is that old school physician from, we've all seen way in the 70s that still promoted smoking for the pregnant woman because you'll have a smaller baby, so that's a good thing, right? We still have that old school mentality that we need to see how science has changed, right? How it's evolved over time, to now much more open, because times are changing. People are wanting solutions, and the ability to do exactly what we're doing is communicate across the world. Is now at a level where it's never been.
Yeah.
And before you had those universities, well, I graduated from Harvard, or I graduated from Yale or Princeton or whatever. And it became a competitive thing. It wasn't a helpful thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And the egos got in the way, and ultimately, people have lost their lives as a result of that, right?
Yeah.
From different medications. I mean, all we have to do is point at opioids, which is a very recent one.
Absolutely.
Misinformation and disinformation, and again, profit driven, and certainly not health driven, because all it's done is created a whole host of problems.
Yeah, for sure.
Back when they were being promoted, it was, even them coming to physicians' offices saying, if you don't prescribe this as a drug rep, you're in breach of your Hippocratic oath for denying care and proper pain management, right? And so physicians are also just as much victims of the mistruths and the marketing from pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, so 100%. One thing that I learned during my time, again, as a clinical director in that facility, is that a lot of doctors, and I didn't know this until again, I was in that world every day, but I learned that a lot of the continuing education for local DOs and MDs was coming directly through pharmaceutical companies. So drug reps were coming in and educating and bringing information and samples and pamphlets and having these, having these big seminars where doctors are coming in, and now all of a sudden they're utilizing, they're prescribing this medication. Part of their continuing ed was not coming from the university no longer. It's coming from these drug reps. And I'm like, wow, so it's basically, great, this is your drug rep. You got a great reputation with them, blah, blah, blah. And again, they're busy. Are they going to take the time to go on the deep dive? No, they're not. They're going to continue to write the scripts and I'm not saying every doctor's like that. I will make sure that the doctor's listening on this. Not every doctor's like that. Yeah, everyone's different, and everyone. And what I love about this, Nick, is I'm a big unity guy. I'm a big team meet guy. For example, right now in the jiu-jitsu community, I have brought something new to the table called Twisted Church. It's got multiple components to it. But one of the key things that I wanted to do in bringing something new to the table was not to do away with but to continue to encourage, celebrate, and support all the guys and gals that were doing stuff before me, all the shows, all the whatever. And you know what? As I have continued to support and encourage them, I'm the new guy in the block. They have reciprocated that by saying, "Hey, you're doing a good thing," and they've supported me, encouraged me. And I think what's encouraging is now you have maybe this time of life we're in. As you said, communication across the world is much more dynamic and easier to connect. You do have people whose motive matters in everything in life. And their ego is getting checked at the door because they genuinely want to help people. They want to serve people. They want to see holistic health, especially in the world of mental health and drug addiction and pain management. And so it's encouraging to me, just as a human being, to say, man, you got all these brilliant minds that are circling around the table together, checking their egos at the door, and they're bringing what they have that's good to the table and partnering it with what's good someone else has for the greater good of humanity. That's a beautiful thing, man. That's the kind of news we need to be telling the world. You know what I mean? So
right. No, and that's exactly it. And that's our new company, Soul Biotech.
Yeah.
Right?
Biotech. Love it.
Soul Biotech.
Soul Biotech.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to we're trying to heal the soul in a roundabout way, right? It's all tied in. And it's a very important thing. What you just mentioned is that integration, because that's when we'll see progress. That's when we're going to see the biggest and most significant gains in healthcare.
Yeah.
Is recognizing that all sides of the fence have their strengths, but all sides of the fence have their weaknesses.
Absolutely.
And this is where we come together and fill those gaps and come to those common sense solutions that work, that are safe, that are effective, that have been tested, driven by care, not driven by profit.
Man, that's a beautiful thing. Absolutely, man. And that's again, that goes back to that motive matters. What you just said there, that rings true. Like I said, Nick, I don't mess with junk people or junk product. I just don't do it, man. If it's right. Life's too short, and I appreciate that, man. That you driven, man. Motive is driven by genuinely helping people, man. That's a beautiful thing, not by profit. Profit will come, and I'll say this: there's nothing wrong with making money. I mean, money is part of real life. Money's like air; you got to have it to live, right? And making a lot of money is great. Being generous with others is great. But the fact is, if your mainstay, your goal is you want to support, serve, and help and empower people to holistically healthy lives, right. That's motive matters. That's step one. That's beautiful, man. And then if you guys make $10 billion, who cares? Because I'm sure every person that is benefiting, again, from these products, less pain in their life, manageable pain. And I know people, and I'm just excited about this. I know people who have a hard time sleeping, and then they're using this product and they're getting enough relief. They're like, man, my back and my neck weren't so knotted up last night that I actually was able to rest. That's huge. And again, go back to like loving people and want to seeing people holistically be happy and healthy in life. Then to know that brilliant men like yourself, educated men who've given 25 plus years of your life to this, for what? For the greater good of serving people. That's honorable. I respect the heck out of it, man. I really do.
Really Cheers. Do. I appreciate that. That's my that's always been my mandate is purely for that. There's a lot of shady things that happen for profits in different companies, right? We don't need to go through those, but that's right. That's my compass doesn't sway that way.
Yes, sir.
It won't. It never has, and we stay true to the course. And the results are there. The results will always follow.
Man, that's awesome, Nick. I know, man. We spent about 50 minutes together, and I could talk about science and we could talk about formulations. I'm not very smart, but I'll listen for days. I thoroughly enjoy being challenged to learn new things. So, hopefully we can have more of these dialogues in the days to come.
Absolutely. I do look forward to future chats where we can maybe dive into the world of mushrooms. And
I would love to.
And, how our DNA is very similar to theirs and how we function very similar to the world of fungi, right? Yeah. So, we'll have a lot more adventures in the future, I'm sure.
Absolutely, man. I love it. And I really do thank you for your time. It's been encouraging. I am looking forward to I have a big event this coming Saturday night. We have a big event here up at UFC fighter Matt Brown's gym. And if you're watching and you're going to be on and you're going to be in attendance watching all the grappling, listen, I'm going to have both of these products with me because I believe in them. So if you trust me and believe in me and you want to give something a try, that's going to be better than your Icy Hot, going to be better than your Bengay, going to be better than those products that you try just to trick your brain. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to have this. It's going to be available. I do have a very limited supply of it here with me right now. So it's going to be first come, first serve, right? But I am going to have somebody sitting at a table. This is going to be available to you. This is the My Pain Liniment DMSO product. It does make a huge difference. For those who've known about my thumb injury, my most recent knee injury, this right here is what I'm using. Be honest with you, I've been able to take a lot less ibuprofen, right? If you're crunching 800 milligrams of ibuprofen every day, you're doing internal damage. It's not good for you. But sometimes, when you're in pain, you're like, well, I guess I'll take my chances, and you're taking the ibuprofen. I have been able to cut way back on that because this has made a huge difference. An additional, hey, for all you athletes out there, I would tell you, this is where it's at, man. I do 7 to 8 sprays in the morning. I do 7 to 8 sprays about 30 minutes before I train. I do not take those GNC, full of sugar, full of all kinds of God knows what pre-workouts anymore. Just don't do it. And I've been able to cut way back on things like the Red Bull and the White Monsters and stuff. So both of these will be available Saturday night. Remember, the doors open at 5 p.m. for spectators. First fight's at 6 p.m. You're going to be able to watch that live on Combat Sports Now. This is a professionally broadcast event, and more big news coming that night. All right. So thank you so much for joining. Nick, thank you for being here today. And we will look forward to following up with you here real soon as well. Sound good?
Cheers. Cheers,
all right,
man. Thank you very much.
God bless. Guys, you have a great day. Thanks for joining Grappling with Life. And my friend Nick, more information to come on these great products. We'll talk real soon.